there was actually a shooting that happened in Utah during one of the ICE riots. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the shooting, and then I wanted to talk about where, as 2A activists, should we be on the issue of immigration and how charged up the issue is right now, and the riots and demonstrations and marches. Should we be supportive? Should we be not supportive? Where should we be on this? But let's start with this shooting. Do we have video for this, Rich? Okay, let's start with the video. Here's the video for the
We reached out
shooting.
to Salt Lake City Police to ask them about this video you're going to see and what it might change for Arturo Gamboa. He's the man being held in jail on suspicion of murder. You're going to see Gamboa dressed in black, but you don't see him raise his rifle, and he doesn't run toward the crowd until the shooting already starts. It's just a few frames, recorded as someone was panning their camera to make a video of Saturday's protest. Fox 13 News spoke to the person who took the video. Then we zoomed in and slowed down the footage. The people in yellow? Volunteer peacekeepers for 5051, the group who organized the No Kings March. They appear to have raised pistols into a firing position. There's Gamboa, dressed in black. This jail booking statement, citing the peacekeepers, says Arturo then lifted the rifle and began to run toward the large crowd gathered on State Street, holding the rifle in a firing position. But in the video, Arturo's rifle barrel appears to be aimed down, and Arturo doesn't start running until the volunteer starts shooting. How Arturo was holding the rifle could be a factor in determining whether criminal charges were filed against the peacekeeper, says attorney Mitch Velos, who has written books about Utah gun laws.
But if you have a reasonable belief that you're in the act of stopping a forcible felony, then you may be justified. Of course, it depends on all the circumstances, whether or not the AR-15 was raised and pointed at someone versus being held at what they call low ready. I think that's going to be an issue in this case.
The new video does not show the shooting of Afa Alu. Police have said he was a bystander hit by a bullet meant for Gamboa. The peacekeepers were volunteering for the protest organizers. 5051 issued a statement Tuesday. The safety volunteer who responded to the individual and who was questioned by police is a military veteran. We are mourning Afa Alu with everything we have, and we are holding his family and our friends in our hearts. At this time, SLCPD has not chosen to charge any of the volunteers. Representatives of 5051 declined to say more. The volunteer's name has not been disclosed. A Salt Lake City police spokesman declined an interview request or to speak about specific evidence.
Okay.
He said detectives are focused on, quote,
So what the heck's going on here? Right? It's very confusing. And as I explain it, you're going to see just how confusing it is. Now, I want to make clear, I'm not an attorney. I don't have firsthand knowledge of this. We don't know everything about this shooting. In fact, I was debating on whether or not I even wanted to talk about this because we just don't have enough information. But I want to comment on as much of it as I can. But full disclosure, this might completely change. There might be a piece of evidence that comes out that completely changes everything. So I'm just going by as little as we think we know right now. But here is the gist of the situation. So there was an anti-ICE demonstration or an federal immigration enforcement demonstration on the No Kings Day that you probably heard about. This was in Salt Lake City. So you had this big group of people that were clearly marching down the street. The organizers put together a volunteer group called the Peacekeepers, and they were just wearing a high-vis jacket, and a lot of them were armed. Now, the reason that they had this group is that they are also fairly anti-law enforcement. So there were a lot of the same people that were defunded the police are now organizing this demonstration against federal law enforcement. So they said, hey, we don't want cops. We're just going to get volunteers, and we're going to make sure that they're armed, okay? There was also a guy in the demonstration. He was not there to disrupt. He was there to participate in the demonstration. He was dressed all in black, and he was open carrying an AR pattern rifle. He was in the in the march, okay? At some point, one of the peacekeepers, one of this, volunteer security in the high vis, at least one of them, and I think multiple, saw the guy open carrying the AR and shot towards him 3 times. And the reason I say shot towards him is because one bullet barely grazed him, and the other bullet found a completely, totally innocent bystander, a guy that was there marching, was passionate about the issue or whatever, but wasn't armed, wasn't carrying, wasn't rioting, wasn't doing anything but marching. And this volunteer security guard's bullet found him and killed him. Now, here's where it gets crazy. So who was arrested? Well, the person that was arrested was the guy who was open carrying the AR who was shot at. There's no evidence to show, and certainly no proof, that the guy with the AR did anything violent or any kind of aggressive activity or anything like that. Nothing shows that he was pointing his AR, that he was threatening, that he was doing anything other than marching and openly carrying an AR. They arrested him because of what's called a felony murder. Now, what is a felony murder? It sounds like, well, that's a murder that's also a felony. Well, the felony murder is a very specific term that means that if you're committing a felony and it results in someone dying, then you could be charged with murder, even if you had nothing directly to do with the murder. One of the most common examples is, let's say that you and a buddy decide to go rob a bank and you're driving the getaway car. So you drive up, your buddy gets out, goes into the bank, you stay with the car, and while the guy robs the bank, he kills somebody and then comes back out, jumps in the car, and you drive him away. You didn't even get out of the car, but driving a getaway car for a bank robbery is a felony, and because that felony was committed, someone died, that is considered a felony murder, and even though you weren't armed, you didn't shoot anybody, you didn't kill anybody, because you're committing a felony and someone died as a result of it, that's a felony murder. So they're saying that this guy that was carrying the AR pattern rifle was committing a felony, and someone died, therefore he is now being convicted or being charged with a murder. Now, he was obviously hauled off to the hospital. Now, that's crazy, number one. Crazy number two is the guy who shot the 3 bullets hasn't been charged at all. Police have completely left him alone. I think they're still investigating, but they're basically saying, hey, this guy hasn't done anything wrong that we can find. At least he hasn't been charged yet. That might change right now. It might change tomorrow. It might change next week. But as of right now, that guy's walking free. In fact, they haven't even identified him publicly that I could find because, they're afraid of, obviously, consequences. So that whole thing is crazy. Now, you can open carry an AR. Before we get into kind of the analysis part, we're going to talk about 2 things. We have to talk about it in 2 different ways. What we know, or at least understand, to be legal. We're not legal professionals. Alicia and I neither one of us are attorneys. So we're just going to give you the best information that we have. But it can't be completely and totally relied upon, but still. So we're going to talk about the legality of it. We're also going to be talking about best practices or worst practices. So legally, I couldn't find anything. It appears to be completely and totally legal to open carry an AR in Salt Lake City.
The only thing I'm finding is that it must be unloaded. Not that that's super relevant at this point.
Okay.
I'm looking at.
So it's unloaded open carry must be in Salt Lake City. I wasn't able to find that.
Yeah, I've got it's code 53-5A-102.2.
I believe the felony that they're saying he committed, though, is that they're taking the word of the peacekeepers that he was pointing his AR at people, which there's actually evidence to the contrary. So they're saying that's the felony he committed. So I was asked by a listener, hey, we want you to weigh in on this. And again, it's tough to weigh in on a lot of this because there's still the fog of war. We don't know exactly what's happened. There's still a lot of unanswered questions. It's been about a week now, but still a lot of unanswered questions. So
Really quickly, I apologize. I need to make a correction before you get too far and I forget.
Sure.
I was incorrect. 18 to 21 unloaded and can be open carried. 21 and up can be loaded or unloaded on a public street or in any other place not prohibited by or pursuant to a state statute or federal law.
Okay,
Can be
so
loaded.
that's
Good.
everything I saw
Yep.
is that the open carry that he was performing seems to not be illegal. It seems to be
Correct.
completely and totally illegal. He didn't break a law by carrying around an AR. So he didn't break a law by carrying around an AR. That wasn't a law that he broke. So that's the legality of it. Let's talk about the best practice. I know there are going to be people, typing away in the comments section or screaming at their whatever. He has the right to do that. He can do it. He absolutely has the First Amendment right to go assemble, to protest, to walk down the street and say, hey, government, I disagree. He absolutely has the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms while he exercises his First Amendment right. I just don't know if that was a great idea. Not in this context. And it just, and I'm willing to bet that you don't think it's a great idea either because you've never done it. None of you, or at least few of you, very few of you, has shown up at a political demonstration that they're expecting could possibly, turn violent with your AR slung as you walk. They say don't do stupid things at stupid times and stupid places with stupid people or whatever, right?
Right.
Is this a stupid thing to do at a stupid time in a stupid place?
I would say it is,
In
my opinion.
I don't think it's a good idea. The other side of that is a demonstration like that, a march, a protest, a rally, never does any good. It's never been effective. We actually go out of our way to say, hey, we don't do marches, rallies, and protests. We don't do marches, rallies, and protests because they don't get anything done. And far too often, they actually make you look even worse. So they actually move you in the wrong direction. If you're telling me, hey, I'm going to go show up at a march or a rally or a protest, I say that's fine. You have the right. But is that the best use of your time? Now, if you tell me that you're going to go to a press conference or you're going to go to a fundraiser or you're going to walk a precinct for a candidate to help them get elected, that is effective activism. That actually changes public policy. That gets people elected. That helps move the ball forward. So not only do I think that going to a march or a rally or a protest, probably a bad idea, although you have the right, carrying a firearm openly to a bad idea makes a bad idea even worse. Now, that being said, I don't understand why this peacekeeper hasn't been charged yet. He fired 3 bullets, killed somebody that he wasn't even intending to kill. There's no defense. He wasn't making any kind of claim that the person he actually killed was doing anything aggressively, and this guy remains free. That's ridiculous. Now, I think that in the future, if you do show up at press conferences, if you do show up at fundraisers, if you do walk precincts and neighborhoods for elected officials, and 5 or 10 years down the road, we have changed public policy and therefore we have changed culture, and people don't look suspiciously at somebody who's openly carrying at a protest, then maybe it's a good idea. But, if evaluating things right now, I just think it didn't end up doing anything right, Now, again, this wasn't even, both these guys were on the same page. They were both on the same team, and this guy still shot at him. He was not trying to disrupt the march. He was there to be a part of the march, and he still got shot. And he got shot at, and somebody else got killed. The guy still shot at people that were on his side, So as far as the legality of it, it looks like the guy that shot if for any other situation, I got to tell you, what if it was an actual police officer? First off, if it was a police officer, this wouldn't have happened. They got these volunteer wannabes, who don't understand what they should be doing or how to defend people, and boom, somebody got shot and killed. No surprise. I don't think a police officer would have made this mistake. Maybe they would have made another mistake. But they wouldn't have made this mistake, number one. But if a police officer did the exact same thing, do you think that their statement would be the same? No way. They'd try to hang this guy. And if it were any other different situation, the guy that shot somebody unintentionally and killed him would be in cuffs and would be in jail. Period. Full stop. End of story. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this? Do you have any question? Did I leave anything out? I mean, there's a lot of unanswered questions, a lot of details we don't know. But what are your thoughts on the general situation?
I mean, you and I didn't pre-talk about this, but one thing that as you were reading, we watched the video, kind of talking about it. I mean, I don't know if this is where you wanted to go with this or not, but one thing that came up for me in my mind is Rittenhouse, like the whole idea of I mean, granted that the circumstances are slightly different, the peaceful versus not, there's different things that play a role in that. But one thing we got to think about is the legalities. Was he legally able to have the right? Yes, he was. We got to take the emotion out of it, right? You got to look at the law. Was these people that were there that were kind of tasked with being like security, right?
The peacekeepers,
right? They're going to still be held. And actually, I didn't get deep into it enough to really have enough knowledge yet to speak on it. But I was just trying to look up Utah law and kind of Utah law in this aspect, and it's legalese. It'll take me a while to get through it, but were they justified in what they did according to Utah law?
Everything I have heard and said and seen, I don't understand why that guy's not in cuffs.
Absolutely, I have to agree. Based on what I'm reading and seeing, I absolutely agree. And like you said, they were both on the same side.
They're both on the same side.
Responded out of fear.
Yeah.
He didn't have the skills or the knowledge or the
experience.
The experience, and that's what I think a lot of it comes down to is the experience would teach you to kind of process things and to respond more appropriately, potentially.
Yeah.
And it just seemed like he responded just out of fear, and it was rash.
I think you're right.
So.
Now, again, we don't have all the details, and I think some things are going to continue to develop on this, but that's the initial, and I think we'll talk about this at a later date when things do continue. But this brings me on, I want to quickly touch on, we as Second Amendment activists, what do we want to do with this whole ICE situation and the protests and the rallies and the violence and everything? Where should we be on this? Should we weigh in, One of the pros is, hey, they're fighting against, what they say is an overreaching federal government. They want to get rid of ICE the same way we want to get rid of ATF, right? Is that something we should relate to and get involved with? On the other hand, the federal government right now is on our side. We've talked about almost every week there's some kind of new thing that the federal government is doing under the Trump administration and in Congress that's saying, hey, you know what? We're finally pro-Second Amendment. We're finally doing things in favor of the Second Amendment. But, does that still, we want even more people to be clearly in this demonstration, there were some gun owners. Do we want this to be a big tent and then say, hey, this is an opportunity for us to recruit like-minded people. Maybe they aren't fully sold on Second Amendment, but maybe this is an opportunity to bring them in and explain to them that, hey, this is why gun ownership and the Second Amendment is important. But the problem with that is they've never been on our side. The issue of immigration, you've never seen an immigration group stand up for the Second Amendment, despite the fact that I would argue most if not all the people that are coming to this country either illegally or legally are here at least in part not just for economic reasons, but to embrace the rights that we all supposedly are protected by our federal government. But they've never been on our side. In fact, I'd argue that a lot of them have worked against us. A lot of the people that are being deported have some kind of violent law that they've broken. And that's why they're being deported, not just because they're here illegally, but they're being prioritized because they've done something horrible. Is that something? They've never been on our side. Why would we want to, reach out and say, hey, even though involvement's always good, like I said, these rallies and protests and marches, just not effective. It's just it paints everybody in a bad light. If you look over the past 5 years, how many violent protests have there been? And the majority of them have been on the left side of the political spectrum. There were the BLM riots, and but what do they always do? They always point to January 6th. And it doesn't matter what your explanation is. Well, there were plants, and well, this happened, and well, the media, whatever. They're using it against us. They're using it against gun owners. I got multiple phone calls from media saying, after like on January 7th, basically saying, hey, we want to interview you. We want to know if any of your members were there. They just automatically assumed it was projected onto us that we were, a part of that we were somehow, that extremist. So I think that there is a huge advantage to staying focused on pure Second Amendment issues as an activist. I think that the real thing to do is to not take your eye off the ball and continue to work on Second Amendment issues and completely leave alone, these other dividing issues. I remember being very unhappy when there were some national Second Amendment organizations maybe 5-10 years ago that really took some positions on immigration and the illegal immigration, and I thought that's not. I don't want to get into that fight. I want to continue to fight for the Second Amendment. In fact, I think the Second Amendment expansion and protection of Second Amendment will solve a lot of problems. Will solve a lot of issues, both in the courtroom and on Main Street. So I think that remaining pure is probably a really, really good idea. So I've heard some people talk about like, well, hey, gee, don't Second Amendment folks have a lot in common with what's going on with these illegal immigration demonstrations and riots? And I don't think we have much in common at all. I think we should stay away from this toxic group of violent amateurs, as much as we possibly can. There is no advantage. They don't ever seem to have our interests at heart. There's no evidence that they ever have. As long as I've been in the state of California, from the 90s till today, I've never seen immigration embrace Second Amendment. In fact, more often I've seen them abuse and work against it. And this story out of Utah is a perfect example. Hey, thanks for watching Gun Owners Radio. I hope you loved that clip. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and follow us on social media, and check out our website at gunownersradio.com.